Massive authoritarian regimes are to sci-fi fantasy stories as baseball is to America. In so many fictional worlds, we see this trope of some system of governance that has to maintain some semblance of control on its vast empire that draws real-world inspirations from powerful factions like Rome or other less than flattering comparisons to mid-20th century Germany. But despite the clear depiction of all these fantasy world factions as bad, there is oftentimes, with the most well written ones, an understanding, reverence, and appreciation among young men for how they function, the causes they claim to fight for, and definitely for how dripped out their military uniforms are. I'm Jared, author and alchemy enthusiast, here with.
Dylan, I am husband and dad who love stories, and the more inspiring, the better.
And this is the Acastic Record.
So, I guess before we get into the discussion over different governments and regimes or empires in these fantasy settings that we are interested in, I thought we'd go with a little icebreaker first. So, based on our last discussion over men and literature and trying to read more and expanding our horizons and ethics and that we get from stories, is there any changes that you've made in the last month, Jared, to in your own life, just based on the discussion that we had last time?
Oh no, I'm being called out. Oh shoot. Okay, I gotta have some consistency. So actually, what I have been doing, yeah. So after last week's session and we had discussed it, and I was like, I feel like I haven't been engaging with enough literature, you know, either reading, listening to audiobooks, or really anything. And so I was like, I need to find more novels that pertain to the things I like. Obviously, like I've said, I am obviously very, very enthusiastic about, Hermetic traditions, alchemy. Some people call it occultism. I guess I hate how loaded the word has become. I am kind of on a personal crusade, I've realized, to reclaim the ideas of what we know as occultism for the kingdom, but that's its own thing. We're not even going to begin to go down that rabbit hole because I don't think Dylan wants to be here for 5 more hours, and so
That's a totally different podcast topic, I'm sure.
oh, it guarantee it is. But so this month, I guess the last couple of weeks, I have done a few different dives into literature. Right now, I am reading Mary Shelley's Frankenstein again. Last time I read it was in college when it was assigned reading, and you know how college students are with assigned reading. I probably spark notes half of it. And
I was going to say
yeah,
they don't.
yeah, exactly. They go, yeah,
Mind reading, they don't.
Chat GPT, what does this say? We didn't have that back in ye olden days. Back in the day, you kids. And so, but I realized, like, I really want to reread this because it's relevant to a topic I'm working on for my other channel or my main channel. And I've been reading Frankenstein. I'm like, yo, Mary Shelley has been on some elite ball knowledge of alchemy, and like she's standing on business. So she's evoking Paracelsus. She's talking about Agrippa, Cornelius Agrippa, like all these Albert Magnus. I'm like, whoa, wow, we're going hard with this. Okay, I didn't
Interesting.
I didn't know that you had game. I respect it. And so, and obviously, a lot of the themes of Frankenstein play into that. But that's not what we're here for today. Outside of reading classics like Frankenstein, I have done a bit of a dive into. Gonna word this tactfully. Modern women's literature. I use the last word with a lot of strain. But
Being very
so
generous with
yes,
its
very
usage.
generous. Some of you may know it as romantasy. Some of you may know the word as smut. It's all kind of blends together. Um, Mostly because I was like, I want to see, because there has to be more to this than just gooniness. And so uh, I got through Fourth Wing. I started A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I was like, if I read these both back to back at this closely, I am going to have an aneurysm, and I'm gonna just start seeing it's gonna be the same story. Like I went to this book club that I go to that's local, and I was like, okay, so two things. I read Fourth Wing. I started ACOTAR. These writers, go find a stable father figure and resolve your mommy issues, because this is the same story. If we could
Yeah.
just do those two things, 90% of the problems would be resolved. So let's not do that. Um, and so, yeah, so went through that. It's, as I have said to Dylan has heard it in the chats that we are in, and a lot of other unsolicited comments when we are playing Helldivers together. These these stories are essentially harem isekai anime, but for women. That's the best way I can describe them. It is, here is a protagonist that really doesn't feel like they should be as likable as they are, in as according to the story, who is hyper, everybody is, likes them, wants to be their friend, thinks they're so great, wants to bang them, like just whatever. And you're like, I you're
Where's
kind
the appeal?
you're kind of
You're,
whiny, Soren
you're
Gale. I
kind of
don't know how to tell you.
insufferable.
Yeah, I don't know how to tell you this. You're kind of a whiny Mary Sue, and I would prefer we focus on literally any other character. and so, and
You
that's
flesh out the world building just a
yeah,
little
literally.
bit more
And that
instead
was
of
one of the
focusing on
things.
you being snarky.
Yeah, no, that was one of the things I told the group chats. I told the book club. I said, "Hey, um, Yaros, if you could stop being aroused by your male characters for 3 minutes, and we could focus on the actually really neat world building you have going on here, and it shines through in some points where you're like, these are some interesting ideas. Everyone's effectively a dragon sorcery. If anybody plays D&D, the sorcerer dragon magic bloodline. It's basically, but it's more like kind of a warlock pact. It's really cool. I genuinely was like, that's an interesting way to do magic. Okay, like
Hmm.
that. Let's focus on that. Nope, we're going to swoon over hunky boys. Okay, we can do that too. So yeah, if we could just stop gooning for 5 minutes and focus on the cool stuff, they would have some really interesting stories, but it just, they keep getting distracted. I'm not even kidding. It felt like it was a distraction. Oh, and almost at the end of Fourth Wing, it spent, and I kid you not, because I listened to it on audiobook because I am a very busy person, it spent almost 2 hours quibbling about the main character killing somebody. I'm not going to spoil it in case anybody is super, super stoked about going to read it now. But
Like two continuous
two
hours.
continuous hours
Oh God,
until,
that's awful.
and at risk of being crass, because there is no other way to say it, until Shadow Boy came and banged the sad out of her. I'm not kidding. I wish I was, but I'm not.
Uh,
So, anyways,
it's so shallow.
it is. It is. And yeah, it's fun, it's intriguing, I'm not gonna, obviously I am not the target demographic. I went in with that understanding. I read every word,
Mhm.
or I listened to every word with that understanding that I am not the target demographic. She is not writing for 30-year-old dads. She's just not.
Mhm.
She is writing for young adult women, and that is the target audience. But there, you can still judge things just because you are not the target demographic. You can point things out, and sometimes it is better to be an outsider looking in instead of somebody who is exactly who the something is crafted for. And,
Yeah, much easier to see the objective flaws in something when you don't have the as much emotional attachment to it.
So yeah, I didn't hate it. I can give it that.
Yeah.
I really didn't hate it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Sounds like you need a palate cleanser.
I do. That's why I'm reading Frankenstein, and I get to revel in all of the alchemy references. I'm like, hey, Paracelsus, I know that guy. I love him. And so, what about you, Dylan? What stuff have you been reading? Anything this week, or anything fun, exciting, interesting, a little crazy?
Yeah, it's funny that as much as we like waxed poetic over uh, the importance of reading and uh, cutting back on, electronics, screen time and dopamine hits that come from that. I was looking at my day to day, and I'm like, wow, there's actually so much electronic usage, and it's it becomes such a habit that you just don't even really realize it. So I have been cutting back and like using lunch breaks because I have like an 8 to 5 job, so I have like an hour long lunch that it's like, I could just like go for a walk, come back, sit down, read something. Like I have the Kindle. There's so many things in public domain. Um, there's all these books that I have on the shelf next to my bed or in my office, and I really need to start knocking those down. So I've been setting the phone aside or leaving it in my pocket and just taking a book out and doing that a few extra days a week, um, and taking the time to read, even if it's like, I've been very slowly making my way through Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Um, and he's one of my favorite. I'll say, we'll say classic literature authors. Um, I think first book of his that I read was A Christmas Carol when I was in high school. Loved that, and uh, kind of trying to do a family tradition of reading that little bit a night, ramping up to Christmas in our household. Um, and then read A Tale of Two Cities, probably I want to say like 8 years ago. But Great Expectations, like is another one of the, like the big classic literature ones that uh, people talk about. I'll say it's more difficult. I'm having more difficulty getting through that than I did with The Tale of Two Cities,
Hmm.
and I think it's just because of the. I don't want to say the writing style is different because like all authors do have
Uh,
their own means of telling us their own like way of telling a story, their own rhythm. But it's definitely like the setting's different, the context is different. The I think there's an element of like it's such a different time period that uh that we currently live in now, where it's like, you know, developed, 21st century country that we live in right now, uh, and we have all this technology and the perspective of the main character in Great Expectations is a very poor, um, a British villager who can barely read. Um, there's all of these cultural context things that are missing, and I think actually when I was reading through A Tale of Two Cities, it was like a Barnes and Noble special printed edition that had like little notes at the bottom to just be
well,
like,
annotated.
"Hey, you're not gonna have any idea what this means because like this is just not a part of modern parlance anymore."
Do you
So this
remember
is what
what
it's
some of the references might
and
have been that were called out? I'm just curious if you had any specific
they
examples of
were like it would be uh it could be anything from like slang of
them.
referring to like currency or articles of clothing, or a character will make a reference to some kind of event that is would have been known by the readers of the book
Yeah,
at
people
the
back
time
in
it
the
was
day in
published.
Britain but
but
not to an
it's
American today.
yeah, and even for like a citizen of France or the UK, that might even be uh, the one that's a little more obscure for them. Because like you really read A Tale of Two Cities, like everybody knows the name, the French Revolution,
Hmm.
but and they know that it happened, but they don't really know like the fine details of what it was like and the different groups you had going around and
Yeah.
all these other things.
Wouldn't it be crazy if
So
people didn't know what the French Revolution was like and what it was aiming for?
oh my
Wouldn't
gosh.
that be relevant? Anyway, sorry.
Yes, very very yeah. Once again, another topic that we could have for another podcast.
Oh
But
man.
yeah, slowly reading Great Expectations and also just parenting stuff. The book my wife and I are both going through right now is on potty training
Oh,
because we have a
fun.
2-year-old and it is, you just she's a really good kid and she picks up on things fairly quickly, but
Mm.
also it's good to just be equipped with the knowledge that it's just like, oh, that crazy thing happened, but we knew it was going to happen, so let's pivot in this way.
See, I've always seen parenting as the old, I don't remember who it was, but I know it was in one of the Modern Warfare games, but it's the no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. That is exactly how I see parenting. It's like, all right, I have all these plans, and they just did the exact opposite of what they were supposed to do. Love it. All right, predictable.
this this child always does this thing in an unexpected way,
Yeah, no,
except today.
yeah, exactly. They'll do the same thing over and over and over again. We had this. I had this with my 5-year-old, where we were doing bath. And I was trying to wash hair. Every single time we've done bath, okay, okay, sure, okay, always wash hair the same way. Then one day, absolute world-ending crash out, and then we were back to totally normal next time we did a bath. I have no idea why. There was nothing wrong. I double checked. There was nothing going on. He just really didn't want to get his hair cleaned that day. Question mark.
So
So
odd.
yeah, so that was super fun. Um, but yeah, well, I will say that to what you were saying about Dickens and reading does build empathy, as we did discuss last week. Real empathy, not fake empathy, not performative empathy, but real empathy to be able to force your brain into the shoes of people that are vastly different or entirely unknowable to you. To be a fictional character, to be a character in a fictional world, to be a character in our real world, but in a very, very different time period. Um, that is one of the strengths of reading, and that is also that is also something that is a bit harder to get through really just about any other medium. Is Yeah, it's hard to get the empathy to go, okay, I want to understand things from character's perspective, even though I can know very little or nothing at all about their life circumstances. So, huh. Well, to uh, that point, to transition not so gracefully at all from literature and reading and what we've been doing uh, into today's uh, into today's topic. I'd like to ask you, Dylan, of these three sci-fi military regime factions, which is your favorite? Which appeals to you the most? The Galactic Empire of Star Wars, Super Earth of Helldivers fame, or the Imperium of Man of Warhammer fame?
Oh well, though, despite how much time we uh, spend on a weekly basis in Helldivers 2, it is not Super Earth.
The democracy officer will have a word with you.
No, definitely not Super Earth, but I and this is uh it's funny that you say the out you know how nice the outfits of the different empires look because I think that also plays a factor in it, but I'd say Warhammer 40K. I like not not so much the setting because the
Hmm.
setting is a nightmare
Exactly. They're like,
in the
hey,
Warhammer
so
40K
we got
universe.
cool clothes. Everything sucks.
Yes. Yes, the life expectancy of the average citizen of the Imperium is not great. Um, but it is just like you watch, you know, uh animations of people like adapting the different Warhammer 40K books or from the Space Marine games. And you see like the brotherhood between the Space Marines
Mm.
um, of like staying committed to the task at hand and like it is always like for the glory of the emperor um it's for the empire it's the survival of the human race like every battle is however insignificant it might seem like there it is connected um in some way to the greater fight for survival
Hmm.
uh in the galaxy or universe. I don't know how big their conflict quite is,
I'm
but
pretty sure that I'm 90% sure that it's a universe. I need to double check.
okay.
If anybody's listening that has their own elite ball knowledge of the Warhammer uh, Warhammer verse, I'm not even gonna say. Can you let us know if it is a universe or if it is if it's just contained to the singular Milky Way galaxy of Holy Terra, 40,000 years in the future? Thank you.
I think it would be it is technically the like universal scale because
Hmm.
you think of that like the number of factions that you have
And there's,
operating.
yeah, things that are from outside and
Yeah.
whatnot, from
And
beyond. So,
and yeah. And how big the like the spread of each of the factions has to be for them to be able to like have a consistent presence in greater narrative. It's like, yeah, that is too big for just like one galaxy, which is a crazy statement.
hmm.
Um, but yeah, I'd say so. And plus, like, just got 12-foot tall dudes in giant armor,
Hmm.
like heavy armor with really cool guns and weapons. Um,
Brother, get the
like,
flamer, the heavy
yes,
flamer.
yes. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's my answer for that. Is Warhammer 40K. Pretty dope.
I will admit 100% that I am an outsider looking in as far as Warhammer is concerned. I do not have miniatures, but I have just read stuff about the galaxy. I've watched all kinds of different animations, videos, things, and I'm like, this is such a cool thing. Wow, I wish I knew more people to get deeper into this because I like everything I see so far. But also, it's also hard because every time I'm like, "Ooh, let's dip a little bit deeper," and then everyone's like, "Games Workshop." I'm like, "Ah, right." And so, yeah,
It's like,
but
actually, you need to read the entire Horus
yeah,
Heresy
let's start with the Horus
series.
Heresy. Isn't it like 60 something volumes or
It's
what?
too many books.
It's too many
That's how
books.
many it
Yeah,
is. It's
it's
like trying to get into Discworld.
oh gosh. So yeah, I would say uh, to this idea of favorite of these factions. I obviously was raised on Star Wars, and so the Galactic Empire I think would be my favorite, specifically their earlier incarnation of the Republic. But also the Republic and the Empire. That was kind of like half the irony was that there wasn't too much of a leap to make. At least by the end of the Clone Wars, they really didn't have to change a whole lot of things uh, to really. I guess when we get into A New Hope and uh, we start with oh, he dissolved the Imperial Council. That I guess could be seen as a rather major change because that makes it a lot more dictatorial, but at the same time, at least for about the 20-year-ish span between episode 3 episode 4, there was, a roughly a similar structure to the Galactic Republic.
Yeah.
But that one very much for the same reason. And this is obviously a very notable thing that comes up. And it's the camaraderie of the clones. Obviously, we don't see it a lot in the Stormtroopers because we just don't have a lot of things that portray Stormtroopers well. And also, it has been cited in a lot of lore sources I almost said of Skyrim. Jeez, what have I been doing lately? Of Star Wars, that the Stormtroopers, Palpatine specifically brought in, all these different races, all these different things, because it would be harder for them to organize and revolt because of their sheer numbers. He was like, if we could just get a whole bunch more people, they'll have a lot less bond and unity. But he was also terrified because of all the clones that were very strongly bonded to each other realized, hey, we don't need to take orders from this guy anymore. And they could have probably actually won in a revolt or an overthrow of some kind because there was a lot of them. And so, but yeah, the best interpretation that we did get as Star Wars fans was from the Star Wars TV show, the Clone Wars TV show that we got for years, that just went on all these different adventures that mainly followed the clones, the Jedi commanders obviously, but really the clones and how they operated in all these situations. And it was essentially just, hey guys, want to watch all these stories of just masculine heroics? That's it. We're making a whole show. We could have just called it Masculine Heroics. That's all it is. I don't think anybody's ever going to top Heavies. Do we take prisoners? I don't. Blowing everything up. Peak. Yeah. Absolute peak. And so that.
Yeah. Well, and then there was the, briefly interrupted by 5 episodes of droid shenanigans.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Guys, we gotta have 5 full, almost 30-minute long episodes of R2-D2 and some other droids going on a mission. You need that. There was one good one in there. The best parts of that whole arc were the Gregor arcs.
The Clone Commando.
Yeah, the Commando. It was Gregor, right? I'm pretty sure I had it. Gregor.
So.
Yeah. With Commando Gregor.
That was good. And all the rest of it, I'm just like,
what are we doing?
Like, can we please just go back to the other cool
I want to
stuff?
watch the cool dudes shoot the robots. I don't want to watch the robots do stuff.
Yeah. All it was missing was just C-3PO to be constantly present.
Exactly. Yeah, no.
Like, complete frustration.
I guarantee you, there has to be a draft of the script out there that they did include C-3PO, and somebody went, dude, this is so annoying, and then they just cut it. I guarantee you. And I also guarantee you that if it were to release today, they would have put C-3PO in it. So.
Probably.
See? Member? So, as it is probably abundantly clear, we're talking about these sci-fi factions that specifically these big 3 that have kind of dominated most cultural zeitgeist, 2 that have dominated for a lot longer than one of them, but I still think that it is relevant. But between the Galactic Empire Star Wars, the Imperium of Man from Warhammer 40,000, and then the Super Earth Armed Forces, and specifically the Helldiver Corps from Helldivers 2, or Helldivers 1 and 2. But there is something about these huge galaxy-spanning empires that have these massive military forces that are usually just a bunch of dudes in armor running around, doing stuff, blowing things up, and talking in gruff voices, that gets guys being like, yeah, I want some of that. Give me more of that, whatever that is. And it's usually very vague and it's nebulous. And whenever people try to talk about it, they're just like, oh, you just like you did World War II Germany. And we're like, no, that's not what we're getting at. This is adjacent to the Roman Empire obsession of every man, that they look and they're like, ooh, neat. that looks cool. That looks nice. And we just want to talk more. Why is that? Like, Dylan, what do you think is, in your opinion, what is the biggest of all the things? I know we've talked a lot, we've written some things down, but what is your idea of the biggest part of these massive galaxy spanning empires? The one like just big thematic thread that you grab at and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's seems like the most reasonable explanation.
Um, well, I think it comes down to just like there's a focused purpose in it.
Mm.
We I think especially for men, like we want to have we want to have a purpose, we want to have a goal, we want to have a community around us that is also in support of that goal that we can count on the support of and helping us achieve that goal. Um,
Yeah, no, I the idea of how everything is surrounded by this idea of drive and of purpose, and it gives people something to hold on to aspire to, and especially nowadays you can ask so many people and like heavy real talk for a moment, but one of the things we did discuss, for a lot of men, one of the most common things when they're having ideations of ending their life is that they say they feel useless, that they feel
mhm,
unwanted. They don't, what am I doing here? All I do is go to work, come home, my family doesn't care, or they do, and I just don't recognize. You never know. You just never know. And
mhm,
but they just look at their job and they're like, cool, I'm just serving a big corporation that does not know my name or does not care about me. I'm just paying taxes to a government that will continue to find ways to make it harder for me to live. How very, very kind of them. And they look at everything like, I'm doing all this work. What am I doing for myself? Where's the meaning in all of it? And when you look
right.
at all of these empires, regardless of the goodness, the righteousness, or even the justness or anything of their
The
goal,
ob- the objectively bad things that they also do.
yeah, they do objectively bad, terrible things, and they uh, do all sorts of questionable, shady, and underhanded stuff. But you look and you're just like, but look at how everybody's unified around a common goal. Look how they're all pushing towards the same thing. They want to have they want to they want to have something that they can all believe in, and that they all uh, know that if they don't know where they're going or what to do next with their life, or even just on a micro scale
Mhm.
in a mission or in their job, their work towards the glory, the advancement of this of our group in whatever way you can. That's it, and at least they have that to go on. That's something. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
saying it's great, but it is something. And as we find with most people, something is really better than nothing in
Yeah.
a lot of ways. And that can be, unfortunately, very much weaponized for better and for worse, as we have
Mhm.
seen throughout history. Is if you give people something to something to believe in, to fight for, you can inspire them to the heights of greatness and goodness and virtue and heroism, and you can also get people to sink to the lowest depths of human depravity. Um,
Yeah.
it's really interesting and a bit terrifying, but also fascinating. How many things have been driven by somebody saying "for the greater good"? Shrug.
Yeah. That's yeah. That's the you follow the train of logic there for what is the moral framework that the leadership is operating on,
Hmm.
and uh what are they willing to do to get to whatever goal they have in mind is. What are we willing to tell the people? What are we willing to convince them to do um, in order to achieve this vision in mind. Um, and I think, yeah, to what you said, there is there's a reality, there's a part of real life where, we have these virtues, this ethic to how we're told that we're supposed to be living, what priorities we're supposed to have, what it means to be a contributing member of society, or to be the good husband, the good father, the good friend. Uh, but the and how these actions will eventually like bear fruit down the line, and you
Mhm.
don't really get to see always the tangible results of those actions, of that pattern of behavior. um if you're a father, it's years of investment, and having faith that you're doing the best you can, and that your kids are going to be okay when they grow up and they move on, or move out. But with stuff like these factions that we're talking about, there is a very real um, there are normally very real threats. Like
Mhm.
with Super Earth, you have the three alien factions of the automatons and the terminids and the illuminate, uh, that there is very much a fight for survival. And while it is a game of parody and hijinks and lots of friendly fire,
Pa-
it
Parody.
is
This is all a joke.
it is very real that it's like, yeah, if however this conflict started, uh, the fight is happening right now, and if we don't do that, like if we don't follow through on pushing back against these enemy factions, then our our species might get wiped out by this. Same thing with Warhammer 40K is
Mm.
uh, the different factions within the Imperium, especially just like the number of different factions of Space Marines, that some there was that huge schism, and which is like the whole deal with the Horus Heresy, and with is a very very paraphrased
There was a.
telling of the lore
Why did they have to write
that
all these books? They could have just wrote "There was a schism," been done with it.
yes.
It's that easy.
Yes, yes. The God Emperor of mankind said, "Hey, there's no higher powers or gods out there that we need to fight. We just need to manifest our destiny across the stars." And it turns out that he was lying, and their chaos gods were real, uh, and it was something that they needed to be worried about. And there was like that, and I could be getting some stuff wrong there, but you had all these different factions that resulted from the Horus Heresy, and all these different Space Marines just like splintered off. And so humanity like has all this potential that they could be winning much more efficiently, in against all these other alien groups, but they're not, because they're not united anymore. But also like the actions that they take uh, in all of these different parts of the Imperium, it's a very real and present danger that's like we have to be consistently fighting against these against the gods of chaos, against these other aliens. If we don't, then
The Tyranids,
all the
the
things that will
Necrons.
happen to will be turned into biofuel by the
Mhm.
by the Tyranids, will be just slaughtered by orcs.
Mhm.
The
Bah!
chaos gods, the different chaos gods are
Me
going
and
to
the
do
boys.
Yes. The Chaos Gods are going to do horrible, horrible things to us if they're allowed to, you know, turn their will unimpeded on entire worlds of humanity.
Mhm.
Uh, and yeah, I think it's, there we want to have the purpose, we want to have the acknowledgement that what we're doing is worthwhile.
Mhm.
Uh,
That
Look
I
good doing it, and you have that with these settings.
yeah, I think I don't. I'm pretty sure it was the Rcast, not to be confused with the Acastic Record, but the Rcast. I'm pretty sure it was the Rcast. I'll triple check the name there. But he does he's this British guy. He does these streams. It talks a bit about Warhammer lore, relates it somewhat to modern life, modern politics, lot of different things. But he had a really kind of poignant reading on the chaos gods and these chaos factions, and how some people are like, oh well, the Imperium's so evil, they're so awful. It's like, well, why? Because they sacrifice thousands of lives every day, if not millions of lives every day, just to sustain their dying empire. It's like, so would you rather that we instead sacrifice billions of lives every day to chaos gods? You see, there is such things as lessers of two evils, and sometimes, yeah, those things get chosen. That idea of the Imperium are not the good guys, but also when you look at the quote unquote, in our understanding, good guys, and I'll get back to that. But when you look at the full scope of their galaxy and the capabilities of every other faction, you're like, yeah, no, okay, maybe 10,000 souls a day to keep the God Emperor alive, and also all the other craziness and all the death that happens and the 2-minute life expectancy of Imperial Guardsmen and all that stuff. Maybe that's all right because at least you're not getting thrown into bio blenders, and kind of echoes the same idea in Helldivers. It's like, yeah, maybe Super Earth had some mistakes here, but we have seen the bioprocessors on the bot front, and that's not great. We should
Yeah,
we remember we haven't forgotten what the Illuminate did to Super Earth and invading and whatnot. We don't
yeah,
forget these things. So yeah, we know that there is a worse out there, and I think there is a fear to suggest that something that has moral flaws, or something that has moral shortcomings and failings, can be a good in any way, even if it's compared relative to infinitely worse. They're like, well, they're still all bad. You're like, yes, I am acutely aware that they're still all bad, but I really, really, really don't want to be throwing, whatever craziness is going on in Warhammer or whatnot. And so, um,
I was also just as upset about the main character of the first Space Marine game getting falsely accused of being corrupted by chaos and getting taken away by the Inquisition, and then forced to fight in the Death Watch for a century, while all of the litigation of the Imperium of Man was going on until he was cleared of his charges and allowed to rejoin the Ultramarines.
hey, in
And
100 years, that's not bad, in
look,
40K time, yeah, that's pretty great.
yeah, well, for a Space Marine, yeah,
Yeah, that.
they live for like, obviously they live for centuries, and then if you get turned into a dreadnought, then
Oh,
even
you live
longer than
even
that.
longer. Just what you
Yeah,
wanted, right? Help me.
yeah, yeah. Well, and that's the crazy thing, is that like, a very fun little bit of lore that I learned. This has to do with one of the factions, the Tau of Warhammer. They're spelled TAW.
You
But
mean
the Tau
TAU,
had been were like,
right?
yeah, TAU.
TAU. That's what I thought. Okay.
They like, they're relatively new to the greater conflict. They basically like 10,000 years, they got to intergalactic space travel, came across humanity, defeated a dreadnought, and opened it up and like, found the dude inside of it, which, very
Hmm.
gruesome becoming a dreadnought, where it's like you're a space marine that's been fighting so much and so damaged, but they can't like repair you to a certain point, so you get put into a dispense coffin and they wake you up whenever you need to fight,
Hmm.
and you can
Staple
like
you in there and be like,
they
all right,
yeah
we'll wake you up in a
hug,
thousand years when we need you on the front lines.
yep. And they carbon date the dreadnought, and they discover that the dude in there and the technology is older than their entire civilization,
Oh
like
my.
more than 10,000 years old. But humanity's technology like and development very much stagnated at a certain point in the tower, like
Hmm. Because of the fear of
developing
their fear of
very
technology.
yeah. Well,
Hmm.
and funny you say fear of technology. Uh, how heavily Warhammer 40K was inspired by Dune is
Hmm.
actually kind of crazy, because you have humanity spreading out up among the stars, developing AI, having that AI take over, and then having in Dune it's called the Butlerian Jihad,
Hmm.
where they basically destroyed all, and they're termed thinking machines in universe. Um, but they their technology continues to develop, but they don't have any no calculations are done with the machine anymore.
Hmm.
They only exclusively uh, use people to calculate that, and there's been a lot of like genetic manipulation and programs to like create the mentats, which are like human supercomputers, um, and the the space guild navigators, that get hopped up on the spice melange that's mine or cultivated from Arrakis, which if anybody's watched the Dune movies, it's spice. That spice allows you to take your brain to like another level, and you can calculate how to navigate through space to your destination. And so it's
Hmm.
the entire um, empire is sustained on spice, because it allows the empire to actually stay connected, because we can't punch holes through reality to travel across the galaxy like in Halo.
Hmm.
We can't travel through the chaos warp, like in Space Marine. We have to travel with very fast ships, but we have to calculate how to get there, um, using our own brain.
It's funny
Um,
that you bring up that connection, the connectiveness part, just because that is a fragment and a faction factor of Warhammer's universe. Part of that 10,000 psychers a day is because the God Emperor is the one who's essentially sustaining all of the warp routes and keeping all of their communications and warps open, so they can actually navigate it without getting lost in chaos. So that's kind of interesting. Like, oh, it's another empire that's sustained on some very shaky foundation to make sure that everybody gets connected. And then I immediately was like, Helldivers is also the same, because our ships run on a very shaky terminate harvesting program that has been questionable in its practices to get more oil, and because or E710, and so really that's another interesting thing that we see a lot in these universes. Really, I guess the only one that you could say is not as as unstable in its foundations of needing to maintain connectedness is the Galactic Empire and the Republic before it. Um, but yeah, you look at those three that you had mentioned, the Empire and Dune, and then also the Super Earth and the Imperium Man. They're all have a very, very interesting relation with staying connected throughout vast swaths of space. So, that's actually kind of
Yeah,
funny.
yeah, and there's very much like, what Lord of the Rings did for high fantasy, we'll say, is very much what Dune ended up doing for sci-fi.
Hmm.
Um, because like Warhammer 40K is very much heavily inspired from Dune, and even the term like the God Emperor of mankind, like, yeah, Leto Atreides the second is becomes the God Emperor of mankind when he, hey, spoiler alert, depending if we get this far into the Dune movie series that's going on right now, merges with a sandworm larva and becomes like a worm human hybrid, and
Oh.
lives for really super long time and rules with an iron fist, and
Hmm.
eventually like has to die in order for the next phase and humanity's survival to proceed.
Hmm.
But
Sounds
Dune
like
gets
heresy to
really
me. Face the wall.
Dune gets really weird once you get past book. Let's see, it was Dune Messiah, then Children of Dune. I think it's God Emperor of Dune after that. Um, but yeah, God Emperor, like I would say Children of Dune is when it starts to get really odd with
Screamy.
the world building, because like, well, it starts with this really like neat, believable thing where it's like, okay, we've got this, like, we've tapped into like genetic coding and manipulation, eugenics, to such a degree that we've like made far more efficient use of just how powerful the human brain is. Uh, that if we use this substance called spice, that it just takes it to the next level, and we're able to just, as particularly in like Paul Atreides' case, is that he's able to like see the different possible futures that he could end up, different paths into the future he
Hmm.
could take. Um, and it's like, okay, I can follow the train of logic here that there's like it's a performance enhancing drug for your brain, based on the rules of the setting. This kind of makes sense.
Hmm.
But then like later on, especially in Children of Dune, it's like, oh, turns out there's also like, if a fetus is exposed to too much spice in the womb, then there's a chance that they are a quote unquote abomination, and you have the genetic record and personality of ancestors that start trying to like dominate, control over the present, and it gets really weird. And I'm
Hmm.
like, we've got a little,
I feel like we've lost the
supernatural,
plot,
but
guys.
yeah, still fascinating, world, and books to read, but definitely like starts to get really odd.
Hmm. Guys, look,
So,
science fiction got weird. See? Nobody cares.
yeah,
uh,
surprise. No, I'm surprised.
so bringing things back onto our planet here just for a little bit,
Mhm.
from all of this, speculation about these empires, these factions, what they do, why they do it, how they operate. But specifically, as it all relates back to men, I think, at least to me, one of the biggest things that I noticed, and this is a script that is, I have so many scripts bouncing around in my mind. If I say the words, it's a script, just ignore me, because that is me saying I have been thinking about this and I'm like, I should write a script about it. Um, but we don't get a lot of portrayals of both healthy masculinity, but not healthy masculinity as defined in the way of modern culture, because modern culture is going out of its way to say, see, healthy masculinity is being, is deferring and always, being okay, and just following what the woman says, be your wife or this or that. and all of these traits that make men very one-dimensional and safe. Um, that was a one of the things that I had as a criticism to my reading in Fourth Wing, where I was like, these guys feel like they could be a lot more interesting, and I know that making it quote unquote current society safe men is part of the appeal, but I'm like, the things that they called, oh, he's so dangerous, that's a red flag. I'm like, that's vanilla. Okay, sure. I guess that's dangerous if you've lived in a padded room.
What's the like what do they mean by it exactly?
What do you mean by that?
Like that he's dangerous. Like
Oh,
what do they mean
that
by
just
he's dangerous?
because this shadow daddy, his name is Zayden, is powerful because he is he has status, authority. He has a very powerful magic that flows through him. There's and this new recruit cadet, Violet, is they go out of their way to emphasize how frail and scrawny and weak she is. I'm not even about to get into that, but it's more of the ideas of he's controlling, or that he tells her what to do, and and that he'll even say things that sound possessive at times. Oh, stuff like that, where we're like, is this edgy to you guys? I oh no, I might be quote unquote toxic, because yeah, sometimes I tell my wife what to do. That's a normal thing. That's how the normal thing in relationships is men taking some charge, or telling somebody, hey, you need to do this, and create and establishing a hierarchy. Because while it is not it's not an absolute right, and that's, I guess, one of the things that we can get into, is there is still the natural idea of the might makes right, and men are stronger in most
Yeah.
ways most of the time. I didn't mean to punch my
How
microphone
do
there.
you
And so
how do
while
you how do you enforce the rules
yeah, how do you
when
enforce?
somebody doesn't want to enforce when someone doesn't want to obey the rules?
Exactly. Yeah. How everybody's like, oh, well, if we just all had the rules and this and that, then we wouldn't need all this force. Okay. Well, how do you enforce the rules? It has it in the name. It's right there on the tin. Enforce.
Yeah.
And
Somebody is not gonna want to follow the rules, and you're going to say, but you need to follow the rules, and they say, make me.
exactly. And
And
that's
then that's when you have to use force.
and then if you check if you're in a sci-fi dystopia, or if you're in a romantasy novel, because the words "make me" have very different connotations under those two
My God,
genres.
you couldn't help it.
I couldn't help it. No, actually, I was like, you said "make me." I was like, is he still talking about? Or are we on a? But that is not to say, that men, and the idea of misapplied masculinity, cannot exist, where men being needlessly cruel, needlessly forceful, needlessly making unreasonable or heartless demands of the people they have charge of, and they instead make requests that are reasonable, that are equitable, that are that will lead to the best outcome for for everybody involved in that situation, even if it's a hard decision, even if it's not going to look nice, quote unquote. That is something that is really lost these days, where we have so much safe men, where it's like, oh, well, whatever you want, well, let's and that's, I guess, kind of where you get the idea of feminine democracies and masculine republics, and a lot of these factions are established to some degree on a republic, where there's a lot more structure and hierarchy, because they understand that democracy is just tyranny of majority, and republic tries to mitigate that.
Mhm.
Please look at modern day America if you would like some examples of how it might go awry. But for the most part,
Right.
when appropriately applied, a republic is able to ensure that more broad needs are met, and that in that structure and that hierarchy. And that's an interesting thing as well. The word hierarchy itself has kind of become a dirty word, where it's like, oh, hierarchy, you just want to dominate, you want to domineer, you want to control and tell people what to do, and you want to hurt people and this. And no, I want a structured hierarchy, so I know who I'm listening to, and I know who I can responsibly give commands to. There's nothing wrong with wanting that structure. And as Dylan and I have talked about, from a Christian worldview, a lot of men, from a Christian worldview, a lot of men see that as, God being the top of that hierarchy, being the where we get our marching orders from, essentially, that we distribute out. And that is not to say that women cannot participate in the kingdom or anything like that. I am just waiting for these things like this to get misconstrued and like, oh, so you hate women. And
You
then,
missed a few words
yeah,
here
you
and
missed a
there.
few
Oh no.
words. Oh no, we appear to have had the selective hearing. And so that idea of hierarchy itself, one of my recent videos, I had to sit here and completely gobsmacked in absolute shock as somebody had commented that Godwyn the Golden of Elden Ring was actually kind of a jerk and a terrible person. And I said, are we talking about the same Godwyn the Golden who fought against the ancient dragons, and then against the most destructive and terrifying ancient dragon, he fought him to a standstill, and then defeated him, and then offered him friendship and said, hey, want to be buds? Because maybe we could learn from each other instead of killing each other. And this dragon and him became so devoted to each other that this dragon followed him into death to try to rescue him. Are we talking about the same guy? And this person's reply was, well, yeah, but he supported a system, uh, an authoritarian system, an authoritarian regime that had a strict hierarchy and this and that. And I'm like, huh?
Okay.
So so he was a real good dude who supported a system that tried its best but had some flaws. And I don't know if she realized it, but that system was founded by a woman, America. So what are we arguing
Which
for here, man?
yes.
Like,
And what were her motivations that we learned about from Shadow of the Erd Tree?
she was mad because the Horn Scent were kind of jerks themselves.
Yes.
Themselves. Like, yes, the Golden Order was flawed in its ways and this, but that was kind of an enlightening thing. I'm like, oh, people just think the idea of structure itself, of order, of hierarchy, are just evil and bad because they imply that somebody could have power, control, and sway. And yes, I think I do, to a degree,
Well, it's
understand where
specifically
that
it's that they aren't the ones
that they aren't the
that
ones in
have the
power.
ultimate authority in that for
Yeah.
themselves in that situation, that there
Hmm.
is another power that you have to answer to.
Hmm. And I think that I do understand to a degree that there is a reasonable and rational fear, especially for women in a hierarchical arrangement, that yeah, a man could absolutely just abuse his power and tell her to do whatever he wants and this and that, and there's would be not a lot that could be done, or obviously things can be done, but a lot of the time, yeah, it can end up in a really, really bad situation. But what we are talking about, what we're advocating for on that front, is that idea of men that are virtuous, that are kind, that are noble, and that want to hold themselves and each other accountable, and are to a degree held accountable by a divine power, a supreme creator. And that is, I guess, kind of a theme that is and isn't touched on by these empires. Is they all have a very large centralizing force, the God Emperor of mankind, Super Earth's government itself, we know, is just a nebulous entity that knows all. Um, and the Imperial, no, I already said the Imperial Man. The Galactic
Galactic
Empire
Empire.
has Palpatine and Vader. If you're acting up, Vader's gonna come for you because he was the enforcer. Um, that those sorts of things where we're like there will be consequences if you're gonna act out of line, and if you're
Yeah.
going to if you're going to abuse the structure, this hierarchy, whatever in place, you're going to you're going to reap the rewards, and they are not fun rewards. You will play a stupid game and win a very stupid prize. And
Right.
so I think that the loss of that idea of, as I understand it, at least through a alchemical hermetic lens, divine masculine, of righteous aggression, of true empathy, of leadership, of command, but also of gentleness, of guidance. All of these things that have to be held together and that are really difficult for humans to do because we are selfish, broken creatures that
Mhm.
will try to look for the easy way out. And when offered the easy way out, we will usually default to it unless we are given a very, very compelling reason to do otherwise. Whether that, obviously, the biggest thing of these empires is they do not always have a divine power beyond that is giving those marching orders, or that
Yeah.
is doling out the consequences. And so it is a corruptible person at the top that is giving orders to corruptible beings. The blind are leading the
Yeah.
blind. Oh, it's so topical. And so,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think
jump in.
you're on. If I could just
Oh,
interject
please do,
here,
please do.
that that you're touching on a really good thing there, where it's people have begun to see that just a power structure, a hierarchy, um, of responsibility, and thus also influence, because the more responsibility means that you have more say as well. Where it's like the assumption is, oh, that is a person in a position of power. Okay, they've already got one strike against them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that person has made these calls, these decisions that are not empathetic, or they're not taught. They're not. We've been presented with this. What about this kind of argument based on a decision that that person in leadership made? Oh, there's another strike against them, and so there's just this pre-existing logic chain that is already, you know, in place, um, to assume that, especially if it's a dude,
Hmm.
that that person is bad. They are not. They are a morally compromised person because they are in a position of power and influence.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like, someone is going to be in a position of power and influence. Like, this is how it works. This is how it works in nature, and this is how it's worked in human civilization throughout all of time. They're the responsibility of leadership always falls to someone
Mm-hmm.
in a group.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's
and
get rid
like,
of the leadership, okay, and then who takes
okay,
over,
great.
and then who
Who
takes
runs
over,
things?
and
Oh,
then who
we
takes
had to
over.
put
Yeah.
some, yeah. Then we have to put somebody else in place. Like,
Oh.
you have not, you have not actually eliminated the thing that you claim to not like,
Mm-hmm.
because it is something that is just, it's so natural to like look to leadership for guidance and direction
Well,
on
for blame.
what to go and how
Mm-hmm.
to do things, and to blame, yes. But like, you do want leadership. You do want someone to help you understand things and navigate through your life and deal with the problems that you um come up against. uh and it's look, and it's evidenced by the fact that like think about the number of people, the talking heads that you watch on TV or on YouTube, or the celebrities or politicians or whatever that you are excited about and you support um, with your vote or your money. Um, like that's like it's in a similar vein of this. Like that person does have influence over your life and things that affect you depending on how much, in some cases it's how much you let them influence you, and then also how much like they as far as politics and government go, like how much they actually do have influence over things that affect your daily life. But it's the key is like you do want to have a leader. There does need to be a hierarchy. The key is that you really do. It's if you have a good virtuous person in that position, good things do happen.
Mhm.
Like the life of the people that have become that person's responsibility, because they see that position of leadership as a sacred duty that they have been given, and they take that responsibility seriously. There's somebody that can be trusted with that. The problem is that a lot of people don't see those kinds of positions quite in that perspective, whether they're stepping into it or they're looking at someone step into it, um, because we've had this cultural deconstruction
Mhm.
of
We keep deconstructing,
masculinity,
but we're not
of
building
leadership.
anything in its place.
Right, exactly. It's like it's like it's like the thing of the number of like crime dramas you see where it's like uh oh, we took out the crime boss of this family in this city. It's like, great, now you've created a power like
Mhm.
obviously
Do
someone needs
you
to be
know
held
what you've done?
accountable, but you've created a power vacuum for other people that aren't as smart or more ambitious or what have you. Uh, so it's like you if you deconstruct something, you don't actually like have something to offer to replace it.
Mhm.
Then you've torn down a foundation that was a load bearing foundation that was necessary, and now things are kind of collapsing in on themselves. Um, and with time coming back around to what this does for men is like, we're millennials. We grew up with Family Guy.
Mhm.
We watch Simpsons.
Mhm.
Homer and Peter Griffin are bozos. you know,
Oh yeah.
they're in a long line of dads that are just incapable. They're lazy. They're the butt of the joke. Um, they're dumb. They're not intelligent. They're not leaders. Um, they're barely functioning adults. Um, and then you anytime you see anything that could be a masculine quality, it's taken to a absurd
Mhm.
degree, to the point where it's just like, well, yeah, anybody would find that kind of behavior uh,
Appalling.
reprehensible, but most people that have that like that enact those qualities, those values, like they don't go that far down that line and become this person that's just miserable to be around, and they're hurting either physically or emotionally their families.
Mhm.
um, and I guess that's the end of that thought.
Yeah, no, I do actually like that thought of the male representation, like the things we really do see um, in a lot of media, and we're only given a select few offerings when it comes to male characters, we don't really we either have the young and confused. I guess Spider-Man would be a good way to put it, where it's fun and it's cool and it's interesting to watch his arc, learning what being a hero is like, but he's usually still very confused, awkward, and not super assertive. Except with bad guys, he loves being assertive with bad guys.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but
and
then
that's
in his
definitely
day to
like
day life,
definitely in like his like earlier days. Like obviously the Tobey Maguire example is like the classic like high school look, like
mm,
the high school era of Spider-Man. But like as he gets older and he starts becoming, a more established person and becomes like being Spider-Man helps him build up his own confidence in himself. And yeah, but depending on there's so many different comic lines
oh
that you
gosh,
could
yeah,
look at.
the Spider Verse
Um,
movies exist for a reason.
yeah, yes, exactly. Um, but there was one point where like the dude had his own technology company, and part of that I think might have to do with Otto Octavius, but uh, or Doc Ock, uh, but he does like go on this personal growth where he still kind of has to be Peter Parker, but he's like also knows like I am Spider-Man. I can do all of this stuff. And there's the holding things in tension between his the two lives that he's leading, but he's not always like that socially awkward character. Like he has to change.
Then we also, some of the at least interesting ones that we got, not fully praising or pulling back from, but early Captain America was another good one of standing up for what's right and this and that, and then Disney happened eventually.
Yeah.
Although catching Thor's hammer, that's never not going to be the hypest moment that I've
Oh my
ever seen in a
gosh.
superhero movie.
I
Everybody just
I
ah.
dude, literally like so we went to see that movie at this place called Alamo Draft House, and it's one of the sit and dine in movie theater type places. And when he caught the hammer, I was literally jumping up and down in my seat. And my wife's just like,
Let's
she's like, "Oh my
go.
gosh, calm down." I'm like, "You don't understand how like this is right now. This is so cool. I didn't think they were gonna have anyone other than Vision holding the hammer."
Yeah, so that was pretty neat. I think that that Captain America is probably one of the better recent memory examples that I can come up with. And then Iron Man, as we watched throughout the entire Marvel, the good phases of the Marvel movies,
Yeah,
where he started out as very vapid and shallow playboy, millionaire,
very
billionaire,
selfish.
whatnot, selfish, and do all of the worst traits of masculinity on display. And then he slowly, as he learned from every movie, every mistake, everyone he lost, everything that happened, he was like, I need to be a real. People see me as a leader, and I need to act like one.
Yeah,
Because I'm still acting like this is a one man show,
yeah.
even though there are very clearly people who look up to and admire me, and um, I need to be different, and obviously the sacrifice of Tony Stark and whatnot. That's like that's kind of a masculine ideal, to lay down your life for a good cause, for the greater
And then
good.
finding your prime lead out spot.
Yeah,
Just know it
every man only
somewhere.
wants one thing, and it's disgusting finding a perfect bleed out spot and dying heroically for a cause they believed in. Like, is that
Yeah.
so much to ask?
Well, and it's funny that you bring up that you make that point about uh, Iron Man and Tony Stark. Is I was thinking about the arc that he's gone on, and like he does, it's this personal development thing that you think back and you're like, yeah, man, like we didn't realize like quite how like we knew it was good, which is why we all kept going back to the theater for every Avengers movie because it was just that good. Uh, but you do see that arc of Tony Stark going from being, you know, dude's probably never really like gone through any serious trial in his life except aside from, obviously when his parents died. Um uh but he is this super genius, billionaire, um, all this charisma, can have any girl he wants, can live this lifestyle and not really have to deal with any consequences because the dude is just that good at what he does. He can just not like he can show up an hour late to something and he'll
Yeah.
still be able to walk away with the deal because
Hmm.
people are just that desperate for the stuff that he makes because it's just that high quality, bleeding edge kind of tech. He has that kind of like rock bottom moment where he's captured by terrorists, and has to come face to face with the consequences of his actions in one of the most brutal ways that he could. And he does like have that repetitive moment of I need to take responsibility and start righting the wrongs that I've done and actually leave something behind that is going to actually, help preserve and better people's lives, not just end them for the sake of whoever can pay the most for the stuff I make.
Hmm.
And not making weapons anymore and working on other stuff. But I think the other interesting line that you go through there is like Tony Stark is still very much himself because that immature, um, impulsive, emotional decision making that was present in the first movie is present all the way through to Endgame.
Hmm.
Because you think of um, how he responded to a situation in the first movie and how first thing he does when he gets back is he's like, I'm going to make the most drastic change possible for my company, which is we're a weapons company. We're not making weapons anymore. We're going to find something else that we're going to be doing. And it's like, okay, that's billions of dollars and you're just doing that out of nowhere. Um, that's really strong. And like, was it the right thing to do?
Hmm.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, it's like because it's like weapons are still needed because there's some people that don't care about the best of intentions. There's no level of negotiating with them that's actually going to come to a permanent, amicable, uh, ceasefire or um, you know, relationship going forward because certain people are just going to want to constantly like are just going to want to be in conflict
Hmm.
to achieve whatever goal it is that they have. And you need to be able to defend yourself from that. Um, and then you fast forward from the announcement of like we're not going to be making weapons anymore. Fast forward that some movies later, um, and you see him like starting to try and square up with Steve Rogers in the first Avengers movie, when they're on the helicarrier and just getting overtaken by those emotions. And then the one that really hit me was just the 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 Civil War moment within the superhero community that you saw in the Avengers movies, where we did Age of Ultron. Um, you had Tony wanting to, in the best of intentions, like create this AI directed Iron Man tech protection system for the planet to protect it from, alien forces that Tony's been had this deep fear of ever since the first Avengers movie. Um, and that doesn't work out, ends up destroying a country,
Hmm.
um, gets a lot of people killed. And it's during the Civil War movie that, he gets confronted. But it's just like, yeah, you think you're really cool and you're really successful, and all this, but like my son was, you know, great kid and was volunteering for foreign aid in that country, and he got killed when you stopped Ultron's plan. Um, and so Tony's like, "Oh, that's right. We were just being total badasses, and didn't like think about the human life,
Mhm.
and we didn't stick around to help clean up. We just thought to ourselves, yeah, like
We saved the day. We did it.
Shield and the world and other world leaders will help clean that up." And I'm just sitting here and I'm like, bro, why are you blaming the team when it was like your fault that Ultron happened? Like
Mhm.
Bruce Banner told you, like, this is a really bad idea. And he's like, yeah, but like trust. And he's
Mhm.
like, okay, we'll make the death AI. Um,
Peace in our time.
but it's like, okay, so he's like, okay, so clearly others, all of us superheroes being unchecked is just doing all this terrible stuff for people that we're supposedly trying to save. So let's just like do the you know military conscription thing with the Sokovia Accords.
Mhm.
And everybody's like, excuse you. So it's like and it's an emotionally driven uh thing where it's like we're just going to take this like hard line uh approach, like this very intense uh stance on how to solve this thing, and not really take the time to actually think things through and like workshop it with other people on the team that are like, hey, if you're going to be doing a superhero like conscription thing with the government or with the United Nations, and Captain America is going to be at the table, the World War II hero that is like such a huge deal for the country, the citizens of the country that pays most of the UN's budget.
Mhm.
Get a little in the weeds about that one, but
Mm.
if he's not on board with the Sokovia Accords, that's going to be really hard for just any authority on the subject. Um, Maybe we should talk to him and make sure that, like, there's that buffer in place. Except, the people that wrote it and got Tony to support it didn't want uh, Captain America to have an opinion on what was in the document, because he probably would have told them that, hey, this is really not okay.
Mhm.
I'm not going to support this.
They knew he
Better
was.
to ambush him with it.
Yeah, he'll take
Um,
a stand for what's right, and we can't have that.
yeah. Um, yeah. All this is to say, like, Tony still has, like, he becomes better. He becomes a more upstanding man that, like, people can look up to, and a hero to aspire to. But he still has that, like, impulsive, immature, uh, emotional baggage. It goes into his decision making, and it still causes problems, and he still tries to do right by them, but ultimately, like, breaks his closest friendship,
Mhm.
breaks up the Avengers. um and so it's fast forward through Endgame, and we're gonna put this failure right. um and in the end, he does the right thing,
Mhm.
which, to your, what you said about men dying for a cause that they believe in, that, and not just a cause that they believe in, but one that is like upholds the virtue and integrity that I think anyone would value from a hero. It's
Mhm.
just like the hero is not out there because they want to, like, yes, they have their own desires. Like Tony wants to go home to his wife and his daughter. I can relate.
Mhm.
Um,
Oh boy,
but like
give me
if
all
you
teary
also
eyed.
had the if you have the ability of, like, if there's a threat out there that is going to harm your loved ones back home, and you have the ability to take action, and it's like, okay, either I do this or it all falls apart.
Mhm.
um and Tony's like, look, shares that look with Doctor Strange, and it's like, this is the one timeline route that this works. And it's like, and Tony's like, I could and like he's processing in his head as he looks over at Strange, and he's like, I can go up there, can take the Infinity Stones from Thanos real quick, and because I have a nanite suit now, I can reconstruct it with my brain to function just like the gauntlet that we have over there,
Mhm.
and I can snap it, but I know I'm not going to survive this,
Mhm.
um, because I'm and Hulk like basically lost the use of an arm from um, using the gauntlet, and he looks over at Strange, and Strange says, "Yeah, that's the cost of victory right now is you doing that." And he says, "Okay."
Okay.
And then they didn't play AC/DC when he snapped his fingers. Missed opportunity.
Yeah.
But it's like, and that's the other thing. Is like you're not going like the heroic figure, the leader that is going to do the thing that is best for the people that are their responsibility, not what benefits their investors, not who's going to fill their campaign budget, not the people that will give them the most likes online, but it's like they actually stand up for the values of the people that they are responsible for, and they're going to do the best they can. They're not going to get it all right, but they are going to try and live by those values to the best of their ability. And even if they keep tripping up and failing along the way, they get to the end of the journey and they still do the right thing. That's the hero.
Mm. And yeah, I that was a completely unplanned, unscripted, you know, break into superheroes to talk about that, but it also is very important to the point of what I'm
You push
talking
the
about.
right buttons.
Yeah,
I
what we're
promise.
talking about here. Yeah, we pushed the right buttons, and I was like, cool. I got the Dylan machine to be like, I have something to say about this. I'm like, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just got to prod him a little bit. But I really like that idea because the ultimate, at least in my in my view and my research and my faith and everything, is that the idea of what we call the divine masculine is sacrifice. And for all of the things that that masculinity absolutely can delve and dip into, being terrifying because of unchecked strength, unchecked power, influence, these things that are typically embodied in in masculinity. The one that goes above all of every other one is that ideal of sacrifice, and a man who's ready to sacrifice sacrifice himself or things, parts or things of himself first, to ensure that those under under him don't have to sacrifice as much, is where that the divine masculine yearning that we all or most men are imbued with. I'd say all men are imbued with, even if it gets buried and suppressed under years of modern society and not feeling like it can ever be achievable. There is something in us that sees men sacrifice, and we're like, I want to be in a position, I want to be in some place where I can, where I can give up a lot to, I can give up a lot or everything to ensure that others don't need to. And that is, some would call it a curse, some would call it a blessing, some would call it both. And that is the ideal that we tend to strive for, and something that we see in all of these groups, all these factions, and really across it, is that there is a recurring theme of sacrifice, sometimes positive, sometimes negative, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but we see all sorts of different things that are sacrificed, and really the ones uh, that are the most inspiring. I like like say the Galactic Empire doesn't hit nearly as hard as the Galactic Republic did, and partially because of all of the weight that was given to clone sacrifices in the Clone Wars series, where whenever clones got killed, especially the more you go throughout the series, and you're just like, oh, I remember him. Oh, he was cool. Oh no. Oh no. And like Fives, his, especially that's also I think one of the things that cuts the deepest for men is sacrifices that turn out to be fruitless or for naught. And that's like one
Yeah.
of the things that really
Or
cemented
very,
like
very little fruit, because
yeah,
it only managed to, the information he shared was uncovered only
by
managed
Rex and a
when
few
you look at Star
others.
Wars Rebels, like
Hmm.
saves maybe 6 clones
Yeah. Only a
that we
few
know
of
of.
yeah, the dreams, the mission. It's finally over.
Mm.
Oh, rip in peace. Anyways, yeah, that is one of the things that does really cut deep for men is seeing a man trying to do good, trying to do his best, and then being undercut at the end when he does make his ultimate sacrifice, and being
Yeah,
like, oh, it didn't even save anybody or that many people or as many as he wanted
yeah,
to.
yeah.
And so yeah.
The powers that be, the system in place,
Hmm.
um, was working against him from the very start.
Hmm.
And even though it says that it wants to do good, ultimately it does not want to. Its definition of the good is different, and it does not want to let him accomplish, the goal that helps the other people.
Yeah. So yeah, that's I think a really that's a really big one for these. Um, Going from that, and I did like that you brought up the dumbification of men, where a lot of these these cartoon dads or just men in general are like, oh look, they're silly and dumb, and the woman's gonna have to come and figure it out, and
Yeah,
but it's okay and whatnot. And it kind of subconsciously and subtly reinforces this idea that you know it's almost kind of chilling if you really think about it, the subconscious reinforcement of yeah, it's okay to kind of be a loser, dude. It's okay. It's
yeah,
all right. Just keep doing
yep.
that. You're fine. And that is one of those things that's like that's insidious. Where
Mm.
you look at a lot of female messaging and whatnot. It's like you're empowered. You can do this, girl. You've got this. You're stronger. You're better, and whatnot. And, these are great things because yeah,
Strong female character is just a dude.
dude,
Anyway,
strong female characters are just kind of would be just very unlikable men. um,
yes.
and hilariously enough, because we keep coming back to it, but it's unfortunately very relevant, is one of the things you'll see in a lot of these chick lit. I'm skirting the other word I want to use.
Don't
Um,
do
don't
it.
don't do it. Don't do it. Think of it. Think of all the things we'll lose.
Yes,
So,
yes.
um, but in this romanticy sphere is we see better examples for masculinity than we see in a lot of other like forms of modern entertainment and media where for all of their smutty glory or whatever, these books do go out of their way, and it's kind of a bit of a self-report for women where they're just like, I just like a guy's personality, and you're like, okay, but why does every novel have to have dude who is unbelievably handsome and is also incredibly powerful or influential
Yeah,
and is
extremely
yeah,
capable.
extremely competent, extremely capable, incredibly powerful or influential in some way. This Zayden guy is a wing leader, which is essentially he's gonna be a commander when he graduates from this college. And so that's essentially what that is. So he's got power and whatnot, and he's also extremely like magically powerful in this stuff. So it's all of these things. It's like all the stuff that we're telling men not to be, their women are lusting after in these novels, and it's a weirdly sick irony if you really think about it of how men are told to not be like this because it's toxic, it's bad, it's this, it's that. And obviously, a refined version of that would be very desirable, actually.
Mhm.
uh, Despite all of the protests, despite all of the words to the contrary, no, there's a deep demand for men who want to rise to the challenge, who want to overcome adversity, who want to push through uh, you know who want to push through resistance and barriers and all kinds of things and protect a woman they love that they care about. That's that's a kind of a primal urge that nobody's getting over anytime soon. Sorry. And so um, I think that is a it's just kind of an ironic little script we don't really see handed out very often. Is you know the book talk boyfriend trend is everybody says, oh well, that's it's toxic, it's this, it's that, and yes, it does need refinement. Obviously not all of them are great, and there are some really really bad titles out there. I learned of one. I'm not even going to share the name of it because I just don't need that in anyone's life. There's a lot of really interesting. I say that with a big grain of salt, but where still just the core idea of men being strong, taking charge, and leading, and that is heavily sought after. So uh, yeah, some people
But
just
only on certain terms.
on some terms, and so yeah, that is pretty relevant to all of
Mhm.
this. One of
Really,
these things you wanted to play too. Sorry.
yeah, I think that kind of like brings us into our third section
Mm,
here. We can cut this little section here out
mm,
if need be. Uh, our third section of kind of going into the danger of appreciating these
mm.
empires in their entirety, not just the best
Yes.
parts, and what is the actual thing. We've talked about what's cool, these things. We've talked about um, other depictions, why men are drawn here into being fans of certain questionable factions in fiction versus the uh, depictions of men you see in a lot of mainstream culture stuff. Uh, and okay, so we've talked about where both are lacking. What is it that um,
Hello.
I guess what are
Oh, okay.
we
So you
I
vanished.
was trying sorry. I was trying to find the words, like my brain just ditched me halfway through.
Hmm.
Um, what is the uh, what is the ideal?
Hmm.
What is the ideal to seek for, to make sure that you are accountable to? What is the foundation of uh, the value system that is dictating that standard?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that would be a good way uh, to finish that out, is to go for the danger of appreciating these empires entirely, then say, what it should be gleaned, what should be avoided, what should be looked out for. And I think the
Hmm.
best conclusion for us would be, what are some practical ways that you listener and also we can try and to think about, to focus on, to integrate into practical everyday life, because not every man has a family, not every man has uh, position of position where they are in a traditional male hierarchical structure of some kind. But what are some things that you can actually focus on? What are some of the things that you can try and do, no matter how insignificant they are? And we can just talk about that, and that'll be a good conclusion. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. Do you want to
Sorry,
kick?
this child, dude.
Do you want to kick this last part off here, or this last segment off of the danger? That's a pretty good theme.
Alrighty. Yeah. I think that in mind, we probably can move into our uh, last discussion point here is, we've talked about how cool some of these groups are. We've talked about how uh, let me try that again. Uh, with that, I think we can move into our third section here. The danger of appreciating these factions or empires uh, in their entirety, not just the best parts. So we've talked about how cool they are, the qualities that appeal to men. We've talked about the what that where we see failures or successes in a lot of modern entertainment, modern stories. Um,
The absolute drip of the uniforms. We cannot forget
yes,
that.
yes, they are. Are we the baddies? Yes, but at least we look good doing it.
We got skulls. Pirates have skulls. They're fun. Yeah, but they're most definitely the baddies. Say what we want about Disney's Star Wars. The First Order looked really cool.
Yes,
Sorry, they had some really cool armor designs. Can't apologize. Oh, and
yes,
also, I really liked the I think the F platform that they had for their blaster rifles. I don't know why I really liked the way that they looked. I was like, oh, those look
mm.
cool. So, anyways, but yeah,
Mm.
but
I never took notice of that.
oh yeah, there was slight
Yeah.
variations from the E 11, but I don't think it was called the F 11. I don't remember what it was though. But the F platform, really cool look. So
Yeah. I think going back to the different empires, like obviously really easy thing to see where things go wrong. Like, are these empires, these factions, uh, mostly focused towards a singular goal of survival or uh, existential survival, or trying to defeat a certain enemy that is an object to the continued prosperity of your civilization? Yeah. In, original trilogy of Star Wars doesn't really go into it, but there's, the Legends era books of Star Wars that had that, you know, alien faction from outside the galaxy that was, an existential threat to everybody.
the
Um,
Yuzon Vong.
yes. Um, Warhammer 40K, we're trying to not get completely wiped out by these other alien groups and the Chaos Gods. Super Earth, we've got all these alien factions that want to either turn us into biomatter for their automaton systems, turn us into zombies, or be bug food.
Mhm.
Um, and then I think that was it. Those were the three there.
Those were the three
Uh,
majors. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, but if you really look at it though, like Galactic Empire of Star Wars, obviously, like all three of these, there are those authoritarian elements to them, where it's like, if you're living there, we are focused towards a single goal,
Mhm.
but we don't really have a choice on necessarily, like, there's the where is the choice for the average person in that scenario, um, in how that goal gets accomplished. Like Galactic Empire, like,
Mhm.
you get stomped out if you there's a hint of being involved with the rebellion. In uh, Warhammer 40K, like, there's all of these. uh, holy texts and legal documents of the Imperium that you as a citizen or you as a member of their armed forces have to live by, and there's a constant scrutiny of any weakness, any lack of uh,
Devotion and
faith or
loyalty.
fervor to fight against the enemies of the Imperium. Uh, Super Earth is in Helldivers 2. I, was doing some reading on that to prep for this talk, and turns out like, not only is there just this massive propaganda machine um, that is uh, always churning out information that is, you know, Super Earth government really isn't to blame for any of the terrible stuff that's happening right now. All of these attacks from these different factions are completely unprecedented and unwarranted.
Mm-hmm.
Trust us, bro.
Oh, are you
And
believing
you
dissident
have,
propaganda again? Dylan, we
yeah.
talked about this. You're gonna get sent to
But
democracy
and
camp.
the democracy camp is actually a planet-sized prison
Yeah, don't worry about
that
it.
that was a site of several major orders that we've had.
Hmm.
But the and this was the thing that I learned about, which is rather topical for where technology has been going and currently is for us, especially here in the West, is the use of artificial intelligence because they are not only have the propaganda machine, but they have an AI that they make use of AI to track uh, their citizens for any amount of dissent or dissatisfaction, and they try to preemptively squash it as quickly as possible. And so when we've had like these massive conflicts um, with like the Illuminate or the automatons, once like the major conflict has died down, there's always like this, you know, not insignificant, you know, amount of the population across the galaxy of humans that are suddenly like, okay, we just like are, because all the resources are getting thrown at this war initiative. Um, all these citizens have suffered for it, and what was the point? Like, Super Earth isn't like going to actually look out for us and like help us rebuild, like rebuild if we're not a priority one citizen or priority
Mm-hmm.
A citizen. They're not going to help like return like any other resources to us and help us like recultivate anything. And so there's just like there's the start of rebellion, which is very quickly quashed, and people are you get put into the planet prison for dissidents or turned into forced labor on any number of other things.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Fun.
which I think is like, it's fun to drop in and play with your friends and kill all these enemies because, like, yeah, it is a fight for survival, but also, like, it's very 1984
Mm-hmm.
with how everything is structured. Like, 1984, if no one has read it, it's following the main character who is kind of like the quote unquote the last human because every history book has either been destroyed or rewritten, every word redefined. Whatever the truth is, whatever the party and Big Brother says is the truth, even if it is completely illogical and does not match reality. Because Big Brother said it, it is true.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when it is discovered that he refuses to accept this narrative, he gets taken in by, you know, their secret police. Main character is put through hell until his spirit breaks and he ceases to. And there's a point where it's like he ceases to be human because his spirit has been broken. He loves Big Brother. He loves the party, but there's also this sense like he might still. And I think I probably talked about this in the last. Might have talked about this in our first session. Um,
I
but
don't recall,
uh,
but I could be wrong.
it might have been just in a different conversation we were having. But uh, and there's like still this thought that they might the party might still have him killed at some point just to not take the risk that he'll wake back up, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you have the same thing with Super Earth, where it's like the history is always being rewritten. The propaganda that you hear is the very thing, is whatever they want you to believe. And if there's any dissent, we have to like quash it and remove it immediately to maintain control. Because we know what's best. No one else knows what's best, and we have to maintain that power. Like obviously, that's the very kind of like evil hierarchy that people don't want, because you want to be safe and secure, and to be able to live your life, have your family, support them, and not have too many people getting in the way of you doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have that in this society because the choices have been all but removed, from your life.
Don't you know you can vote for the status quo or the status quo? So many options.
Mhm.
Pick your favorite flavor of status quo. Gosh, I wish that wasn't relevant. And so yeah, I do think that one of the things that whenever you're approaching any topic of any kind, uh, you do have to understand what the message is behind that topic in its entirety, and really try apply that brain, do some heavy brain lifting, and look for what are the genuinely positive outcomes here, and what are the shortcomings, and what are the means that are used to achieve that goal, that society. And sometimes it's a little harder to answer of, is it worth it? I know that's a very genuinely very uh, unheard of thing to say, especially nowadays. Is there's sometimes you look at our society, you look at some of these other societies, these fictional ideas of a society, and you go like, okay, but I get it. And it's like, yeah, that's a tough thing to say, but yeah, you kind of get it. Where you do have to be able to weigh and be able to understand what trade-offs are being made, what choices are they choosing, what things are they prioritizing, what things are they doing that are notably evil, and can those things be avoided? There is a degree of almost every one of these societies, civilizations, has some tight grip on speech of some kind, and that's kind of become the be all end all of just, this is how you know that this empire is bad, is that they have a grip on speech, because usually speech is the one of the more powerful things, especially if absolute control is what you're going for, and if you have people that are saying, well, I don't think that this thing that you're doing is right, or this or that, they might get people questioning and this and that, and then dissidence and rebellion, all that really fun stuff that's associated with these empires. And that's probably one of the least defensible things for almost any one of these empires, because it's like, yeah, if you want to have progress in a society that's able to progress, you have to be able to let people talk. They have to be able to discuss things openly and freely, and that's kind of impossible to do that if you are you know if you're doing a face the wall every time they suggest that maybe we went too far in X, Y, or Z mission. But the some of the other things, it's kind of harder to tell. One thing that's brought up very often about Star Wars and the Galactic Empire, they're like, what did the Empire do? And like, yeah, they did build a planet destroying death laser, and that was kind of their point of no return, was when they blew up Alderaan. But for those first 20-ish years, what did people see? A few more stormtroopers. Like, they've been very bad with a lot of their with a lot of the representations of the empire to be like, oh, they have a few more. They might have one security checkpoint going home. They might have a couple stormtroopers patrolling the streets, and that's it. And so they're like, okay, so we have a bit more structure and this and that, and things aren't as chaotic as they were in some other ways, but you kind of have to go, yeah, I could see where some people would be like, yeah, I didn't even really think we were under an empire, at least not until they blew up Alderaan. Then I was like, maybe this is going a little far. Um, but yeah, there it is hard. It is kind of hard for us who are, people living in the modern world to look at some of these empires and go, look, it's existential, outside threats that are, glassing our planets with orbital cannons and things like that. But well, let me get back on that. At the same time, it can be hard to fully grasp and fully understand the, you know, what the implications of the trade-offs that they make for the society and the system that they have, because we are not under that exact same threat, that exact same scenario. But at the same time, do you have a few things you want to add? Because I reached the end of my thinking train.
You know, you swore there was more train. There was more
There was
cars to
so
that
much.
train.
There was so much track. Yeah, there absolutely was. I was like, oh no no no, guys, there's a lot to discuss here. My brain's like, I'm plumb out of ideas, sir. What?
I definitely did have a couple of additional thoughts to add to that, but then I was like, "What's going on? He's not even like responding that I tried to say something." And I looked down, and I have a red light on my mic instead of a green light, and I'm like, "When did I mute myself? I
Oh
don't know."
no.
Uh,
Oh no.
no, but you got my whole tirade earlier about 1984, which I think was the last like long string of things that I had said.
Yes, I
Um,
did hear that.
but that's fine. I guess the real where do we wrap this up?
Yeah. All right.
Where
So,
where 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 do we land this plane? Do we land it on the fact that it's just like, oh, are we gonna direct? I mean, we can direct people to like, hey, what are some like good heroic what are some good heroic stories? What is the hopeful end point you can leave on that? Because we've talked about like, oh yeah, like these are cool. it's it's understandable if you follow the logic train for the setting of how things got here, and there's a little bit of like what do you even do different at this point? Like you've overplayed your hand, and you've got to just follow the game through to the end. Um, and the modern day is very anti-masculine qualities that we as men are just like, man, I guess that's it. Is that you look around you and you're just like, man, the stories are bad. Everybody knows it at least subconsciously. That it's like something's not right here. This doesn't feel right.
mhm.
Um, then these other stuff seems cool and is like, you know, muddy reflection of something that like resonates deep within me of desires that I have that haven't quite dictated. But there's also these other things that are done wrong about it that I find reprehensible. So where am I supposed to go with what where do I go with this feeling that I have of there just doesn't seem to be a place to like put in the roots and draw something from. Draw like an identity, the confidence, the sense of being capable and having a purpose.
Hmm.
As
Wow.
I think
That
might be where
was
we need to go there.
Yeah. I was gonna say, that was a really good wording, a muddy reflection of something that speaks deep to your soul. I really like that wording there. So yeah, was we were talking about all of these factions, all of these strong, powerful systems that have all of these great and terrible, uh, typically masculine identified traits. Yeah, where do we look is something that I imagine most men are asking nowadays. Like Dylan said, that we do have a culture that does push back on a lot of masculine ideals. Like the fact that I have had the thought in the back of my head of, bro, we're so getting demonetized. We're not even monetized, but you know what I mean. We're so getting canceled for half of these very should be very normal things that we're saying of like, yeah, you got to be in charge, you got to be strong, you got to lead, and also balancing it with you have to sacrifice, you need to grow, be more, be fair, be kind, be gentle. All of that still is like unacceptable because you still have you have to be strong, you have to be able to engage in ruthless, righteous aggression. You have to be able to do all that stuff, and that stuff is all bad words to people. And it's kind of crazy to think like we're at that point where men are so can be so uncentered and so debased from what we know as what we instinctively, what we know deep down uh, as our purpose, as our soul. And I honestly think that one of the things is that you have to be able to accept and realize that you can't really get the traditional ideals of masculine heroism on a imperial scale. And that's a tough, well, at least in our world, I don't think you can. In our current broken, sinful world, you cannot have imperial scale, masculine empire, republic, whatnot, that is true and righteous and virtuous. You just can't do it because there will always be the justiciar, the custodian, the whatever, or the custodes, whatever the rank or whatever we want to say it is, that is going to fall to corruption and to cover up or to try and correct for their corruption. Somebody else turns to corruption. Round and round and round it goes. Where it stops, nobody knows. And you really do have to bring all these ideals back in and be able to start implementing them on a personal level to yourself. And if you are a father or in any kind of position of of masculine authority in that setting, in a healthy and mediated and uh, just sort of way, because you're the only person that you can both trust and keep accountable for what these ideals are supposed to look like in practice. And as me and Dylan both agree that yes, the Bible is there as a guide, as a spiritual reference for this divine masculine ideal of sacrifice, and the ultimate masculine sacrifice is a pretty important part to the entire religion, right? Oh,
Yeah, so
so
I was gonna say, I was like, man, where do we go from here? I'm like, sorry, not
mm.
sorry, but I'm busting out the Bible here, bud.
here we go. And so yeah, this Jesus guy was pretty chill, super rad, and so that is
Don't know about
a
chill, but rad for sure.
um, that's one of those things. We see a lot of these masculine traits embodied through Christ. The driving out in the temple and whatnot, of the idea of righteous anger, of these people are
Yeah.
going against what's been divinely mandated, what is they know these people know is wrong, and they are just not doing. I always love the memes and the things that point out that it takes time to braid a whip. And Jesus, this was not impulsive. This was premeditated. Jesus sat down and said, I'm going to braid me a whip real quick. And I'm going to go back in there and I am going to drive these people out.
Yep.
Which is diabolical work, but
Yep.
also very funny to me.
Is it vengeance or righteous anger from my father's
Exactly.
house that's consumed me? Is that the
I, th-
prophecy?
yeah, I think that's that also does kind of speak to that idea of masculine, righteous retribution is the idea of it's not an impulsive, a sudden emotional outburst of it is a I have thought about everything that has gone into what you have done, what this group has done, what could happen, what is happening, and I have decided that I have to act in a way that I don't want to. I don't want to throw hands, but I have to throw hands because these people won't stop any other way. That is what masculine retribution is. It's not a, oh, you punch me, I'm gonna punch you back because I got to prove how tough I am. I got to prove I'm big.
Yeah.
I'm strong. I'm all this stuff. You just it can't be a a obviously there are times that you have to be reactive. They're not saying if somebody tries to grab your child and run off with them, you go, is this person really that much of a threat to my kid? No, you run after them and you beat the hell out of them to get your kid back. But
Hopefully
yeah,
you're not in California.
yeah, real. And so there is a guidebook, there is a masculine ideal out there in the Bible, and if you are not a follower of Christ, you are not a believer, I'd strongly encourage you to read it. It's a pretty good book. And some people are like, oh, Christians have never read through the Bible. I have. I went to Biola. I had to learn, so I have read through the Bible, and
Mhm.
I can say with certainty that yeah, it's definitely the most masculine text that has been written in some time. Probably because the architect of reality had kind of did that whole thing. So I'm
Mhm.
gonna trust his ideas on masculinity more than just about anyone else's. Sorry, Dylan.
Right.
And so I do think that that is a way to look at fiction. Don't we shouldn't shy away from these fictional things. We shouldn't shy away from that deep-seated longing for a return and a call back to our inner masculine. This script idea that I vaguely mentioned touches on that. I'm specifically talking about Godfrey from Elden Ring, Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, and how he does this theme of divine masculinity so well, of being, polite, being composed, being cordial, um, and also being this all practically feral animal when we get to his phase 2, where his first attack is to fling us in the air and pile driver us into the ground.
Yeah.
I
Something
cannot think.
straight out of WWE.
And but this idea that this unrestrained drive and ambition and desire to achieve something more is is fully on display in that phase 2, um, when he embraces his, dare I say, rubedo self, and uh, absolutely wipes the floor with us. He drops the weapon, he drops the armor. It is just him in his entirety going, all right, it's time to actually throw hands.
Raw strength.
I am done. Yeah, as he says, I have given thee courtesy long enough. And that idea of giving courtesy, yes, courtesy is nice and good. We should be restrained to a degree in our judgment, in how we react and how we behave. But once we have given the courtesy long enough, it should be ferocious and genuinely terrifying, because it's not something that is a default. It is not an always lash out, always be acting like an animal. But when there is a cause that is worth fighting for,
Yeah.
a fight for survival, a fight to defend others. That is when, that inner animal beast whatnot that we see him turn into is a divine masculine ideal. And even
Yeah.
before his fight, we see him holding his dying son of Morgoth and looking genuinely heartbroken that he didn't get to have more time with this kid. And it really kind of embraces the entirety of, masculinity, of fatherhood, of being polite, being composed, being intelligent, and of being powerful, strong, and ferocious when there is a cause that needs to be defended.
Yep. I'm surprised you didn't go into some young in the shadow self there.
I
Uh,
really wanted to, but I was like, you know what? I'm gonna be
I
masculine and show some restraint. Look at me go. Ooh, ooh.
Yeah, well, as you're going into that, I was thinking about a talk that Jordan Peterson was giving about oh, and I'm not going to try to do the voice right now, but
Mm,
he is talking about like, okay, well, yeah, you're a virtuous person, but you don't have like, but you're basically you have no teeth, like you're not virtuous uh because it's something that you want to do or that you're choosing to do. It's just you're there because you haven't done anything. So you're kind of useless. But if
mhm.
you're capable of violence and you know that you're capable of grave violence, but you choose not to because you are because it is a tool, not all of who you are. It is not your identity. It is not, and it is not something that you lord over people,
Mhm.
which is what the despots do. Um, that people often think of when they think of authority. Um,
Mhm.
then you are the truly virtuous person. Um, I think that there's a lot of um, there's a lot of literature out there, be it fictional or philosophy, that you can go into about the virtues and what it means to be capable, what it means to live a life that is disciplined, that is confident, with integrity, a life that you look back on and you say, I lived well, I did well, I made the people that were important to me that I made their lives better. You can check out Stoic philosophers. There's other inspiring stories, but a conclusion that I've arrived at as I've gone the last, like, I'd say year of listening to different podcasts and uh, philosophy uh, buffs on YouTube, who are much more well read on a lot of these subjects than me, is that it's all well and good, but so much of philosophy and the virtues you find in stories is humanity trying to reach the divine in any other way than the very clear path that they've been provided with. And that's a whole other, constructed talk we'd have to do some other time
Oh yeah.
of like
Oh yeah.
where do we yeah, where do we find and I'm sure for you it's Jared, it's for me, and how much of that uh early days of that was reaching for a divine state of being, um
Mhm.
or
Well,
a divine model.
yeah.
Stoicism reaches for this, and I don't have nearly as well of an understanding of it as I would like to. I have a book that is a collection of Stoic teachings from like all the greats of Stoicism, and I have yet to be able to actually really get into it, and I really want to.
This might be end up being next time's conversation is this misunderstanding of Stoicism that's inspired specifically from a something that was said to me at a barber shop. I'll tell you more about it later. That might actually just end up being our next thing, because stoicism is gravely misrepresented. Everyone's like, "Oh, it means being depressed and sad all the time." I'm like, "What are you
Yeah.
talking about?"
You're just apathetic and
Yeah, you
a
don't
bum
care.
to be around.
The world's terrible, and I don't want to do anything, and everything is
Yeah.
bad, but I'm real smart about it. No, the best stoic characters are usually the ones that are laughing and with friends and also fighting. Was it Geeky Stoics that did the thing about Goku being one of the best like stoic examples, that he's hilarious and also insanely powerful.
Yep. Yep. I'm pretty sure that was that. And that was, yeah. They definitely probably did one of those videos, and I think they're doing like a series right now on reading through the Screw Tape letters, but which is very interesting. Um, but yeah, just like it's these stories are reaching for these different um, assets that really, as I growing up in church, really taking ownership of my faith when I was in college and in the years since then, I kind of just look around at and I say, yeah, and you all are downstream of this of the the fountainhead that is the source of the truth uh, of the virtues of this model of masculinity that we find
The,
in
the root of
Christ.
the root of
Uh,
Akasha, one might say.
no,
No, don't do
you
it.
you said it this time, not me.
Don't drag me
Uh,
down this hole.
that was me. That wasn't me this time. But but yeah, it's we have this. There's this very sanitized and like uh you know uh demasculined version, like idea that so many people have of Jesus and what it means to be a follower of Christ, and the virtues that are you find in the Bible. It's like it isn't a weak life to be a follower of Christ. The what you're called to is very hard, but and it can be very tiring. But the whole point is that you're not doing it on your own. You are given you are given the strength beyond yourself, beyond human understanding. Ideally, you're involved in a body of believers that are not perfect, but they are also trying to seek after um, this life of following Jesus and trying to become more like Him. Um, and they are trying to do that every day. And there is accountability and encouragement for yourself in that community. And really, like so much of the idioms that I'm sure if anybody's like not really churchgoer, they like read Proverbs and they're just like, "Oh, I've heard that before." It's like, yeah, it's in Proverbs,
Yeah, it's
or
in
it's
Proverbs.
something that Jesus said. Like,
You'd
hey,
be surprised.
Abraham Lincoln saying like a house divided itself against itself cannot stand. Jesus said that.
Yeah.
He was quoting the Bible.
Yeah, it's
Um,
almost like a lot of
it's
society was founded on these divine ideals. It's weird.
yeah,
I don't know
it's like
why we would do that. Why would we want to
yeah,
follow what was been understood as the architect of all reality for
yes,
so long, and then just go, we can do it ourselves. We
yeah,
built our entire society after the things we learned from the architect of reality. But I think we got it from here. Thanks, though.
yeah.
That does kind of tie to what you had said. You had mentioned the alchemy there, and I'm gonna keep it brief. I promise. When I say alchemy, I'm gonna keep it brief because I always keep alchemy brief. Where you
He
would
lied
men,
as easily as he breathed.
but where you had said that that the understanding of alchemy as a reaching for the divine to kind of take, or I guess there's a lot of wordings you could use, usurp or even just attain divinity. I I see that as a sort of a more modern take. The alchemy I want to reclaim, as it's been co-opted by, as I'm calling, gurus and grifters. A way more fun edition of Dungeons and Dragons is gurus and grifters. Um, and that's been co-opted, you know, you can reach your own inner divine and this and that, when really a lot of these early Christian alchemists, you know, Paracelsus von Hohenheim's, and oh gosh, have you seen Paracelsus' full name? Paracelsus Theophrastus Bombastus something else von Hohenheim or whatever. It's hilarious. Theophrastus Bombastus is the coolest name I've ever heard. It's Theophrastus Mr. Bombastis. So I can never get that out of my head. But this ideal of, you know, everyone's like, oh yeah, they were trying to, you know, become gods, or, you know, to really, you know, gain, you know, perfect divine understanding. Is really, when you look at the work of these Christian alchemists, it was, we want to understand God's language of reality of creation. We're going to try our best to figure it out with what we've got as mortals. Obviously it's kind of tough, you know, like the sheer, you know, the marketing blurb of alchemy, lead to gold, is very appealing to everyone. Hey, take your trash and turn it into infinite. It's an infinite money glitch then, right? That's what alchemy is. And you have to kind of say, no, we're pretty sure that we're just, you know, for the most part, these people are talking on, you know, these inner realizations of being a better person, that's able to recognize that everything you have, the things that you have in your life, you will see them and value them as gold because of this inner transformation. And yeah, that's disappointing. And it's also not to say, you know, with a better understanding of reality, that you won't have a better time with, or an easier time with, understanding how riches are often made and understanding that process. So it's not technically lying, but it's also not technically, you know, the lead to gold that it's advertised as. But I personally I see it as, and that was more of a, let's set the record straight, that I see it as a interpreting the divine so that we might live better lives here on earth, so that we can, you know, so that we can do more, achieve more, and be more when we shed off this more mortal coil and go and face our final judgment, kind of thing. That's how I've at least interpreted it. I don't see anything that would conflict with that, but yeah, that's my take on that. But you know how it is, and I know how it is. If I start talking about alchemy for too long, we will be here for another 2.5 hours. So we're not gonna do that, because I have a feeling that Dylan doesn't want to talk about alchemy for 2.5 more hours. please scare me, Jared.
Certainly not a unplanned 2.5 hours.
You did mention Carl Jung earlier. Oh no. Wait. So, with all of that being said, do you have any final thoughts, Dylan, before I wrap us up here?
I think I got it all out there.
Fantastic. Well,
You can collect all the great stories that you want. You can seek after plenty of philosophical teachings, as well intentioned as they may be, but ultimately, the true peace, the confidence, the identity that you are looking for, I firmly believe you're going to find in the person of Christ.
I am completely in agreement with that statement. No notes. So yeah, with everything we've talked about here, we do want to hear from people in the comments. If you can think of these empires, these, you know, these fictional fantasy structure societies that have drawn you, or have just, you've seen things, you're like, huh, that's cool, and you feel like you don't have anybody to talk about. We of course want to hear about it, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people that think very much the same that you do. We've talked pretty openly here about stuff we find cool with these groups, with these empires, and also how to effectively integrate these ideals of what is, you know, to us a fantasy nation that embodies these themes and how to convert those into something that is real, tangible, and doesn't slide into uh, executing dissidents and all the other craziness that we see from these places. So until we can talk again, I am Jared,
And I'm Lynn.
and this has been the Acastic Record. We hope to see you next time.